Welcome to The Way Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Way Forward. Dr. Stacy, thanks for joining the podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I feel like you are the perfect guest for our podcast right now because I think like we've touched a lot on EMF, but there's just so many different aspects to health that's related to technology outside of EMF as well. Like EMF is a big topic, but then there's also all these other things like circadian rhythm and light and, you know, how that's affecting us. So I'm excited to jump into that with you, but I want to start with a little bit about you first and kind of like your background and how you came to where you are now.
For sure. I get asked that all the time because I think I have somewhat of a unique perspective on healing and health. And I will say, like, a lot of people are like, where did you train? And it's like, well, I was sick for most of my life. Most of my wisdom comes from that and trying to heal myself. So that's a part you can't really train for, right? It's just experience that helps that. But I'm a naturopath, traditional naturopath. So very much rooted into nature and trying to help bridge the gap between this modern lifestyle and how do we continue to connect back to nature. As we are going to talk about, a lot of these man-made diseases are because we are living in these artificial environments, right? And we have a lot more exposures and things like that we never had in our primitive years. So for me, it's been a lifetime of being sick. I come from a family of doctors. There's 3 MDs in my family.
Wow.
And just finding that conventional, since I wasn't disease state yet, which I was on my way there, right? But conventional just didn't move the needle for me at all. So I just really, I've been in the health and fitness world for such a long time. And it was just a natural transition to learn more and more and more as I was trying to heal myself. And it took me getting a doctorate in functional medicine and all of these extra things. But it's been an amazing ride. And, you know, I've healed myself. I get to help, you know, people heal every single day. And it's the way it's meant to be. It's great.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your personal healing journey? Like what was going on and what did that look like?
Yeah, of course. So for me, it started as old as I can remember. I've had debilitating anxiety. I think there was a lot going on with my gut because I just had ear infection after ear infection when I was little. So amoxicillin was like on repeat over and over again. So a lot of gut issues, a lot of just environmental, the way I internalized everything as a child too, like, that was a big piece of it. But yeah, debilitating anxiety was kind of like what kept the needle, you know, or started the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And then as I got to, you know, be older, it would now be panic, right? Panic attacks. And then just weird autoimmune hormonal issues like we all hear about and experience. And then breast implants were in my, you know, college years. So that was another thing that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Wasn't the causative effect, but it certainly was more than my body can handle. So just kind of like, you know, I'm blessed because the breast implant illness kind of opened my eyes to functional medicine. So I'm blessed in that regard. It helped me kind of fill in the void there. But so learning, like I said, learning all about these things, helping my body detoxify, changing the lifestyle, the habits, all the things that have, you know, really moved the needle for me are things that I can pass on now. So it's great.
I love that so much. I feel like the breast implant thing has been that wake up call for a lot of people. Like I have seen so many interviews where it's like they get the implants and then like just start like it's like a cascading effect down and they just like there's no other way to, like there's no other thing that I know that this could be than this, and it like just really wakes people up to like what we're putting in our bodies and how that's impacted. Because I think for a long time with anxiety, I really struggled with that, especially in my early 20s. And I didn't really realize the impact that food was in alcohol and all of the things that I was indulging in at the time was having on my like, you know, emotional body and mental body until I went through my own like physical healing, like through just having chronic sinus infections and all this stuff where it was like, okay, I have to cut out sugar. I have to cut out all of this stuff because these 6 rounds of antibiotics and steroids and all this stuff that they're giving me.
Yeah.
It's not working. That's like kind of where same thing, like you get really sick. It's not working. Okay, I'm going to try something else. So I went like completely, you know, at that time, that was kind of the thing to do. I did like completely raw and then, you know, cut off with all the sugar and stuff. And that's when I discovered the impact that food was having on my mental health. Cause then, you know, you start incorporating those things back in, you start having a couple drinks with your friends. And then like 3 days later, you're realizing like, I'm depressed right now.
Deep,
like what
dark
is going
place. Yes. And how many people just do that through college or are using it as a coping mechanism for their anxiety, and it just makes it worse, right? Like it was a cycle. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
I can definitely see like how alcoholism happens, because it's like when you're in, you know, you're drinking and you're having fun and you're like, you know, you feel free. And then it's like 3 days later that starts kicking in, your body starts responding to like trying to detox all of that. And like your liver's having a time. And so it's just super interesting to have gotten that understanding, but having had already gone through the healing process and then realizing like, oh, like I'm severely impacted by sugar and alcohol and like these things that I really just can't do. My body can't do. So did you ever get into like, this is kind of a segue before we get into the circadian, but did you ever get into like the MTHFR and like, did you ever find out if that was, what's your take on that?
I did. I mean, I tested myself, I tested my son, and you know, I'm into it, but not, because here's the thing. It's like over 50% of the population now, right? Yes. Genetics load the gun. Our environments, our habits, our lifestyles are what pull the trigger. And so I think it elicits a lot of fear. I see a lot of people like, I think it's almost like a scapegoat, right? Where people are like, oh, well, I'm just sick because I have the MTHFR. And it's like, no, you're sick because your blood pressures or your blood sugar is on a roller coaster. You're in your blue light all day long. You're being bombarded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a cop out. I really do, because, and I hate to say that, but, I just don't see it being of much value for people to know what could go wrong. Right. Like, it's like,
especially if it's such a high population, I totally get what you're saying. Cause if it is such a high population, like if it was only like a small percentage of people and it's a very specific thing and there's a very specific diet, but it's like, it's the majority of us.
It's most of us.
So we really should just be, following these protocols anyway. You know what I mean? Like paying attention to, you know, folic acid versus folate or whatever, all of these things that they say to do if you're MTHFR. It's like, no, we all should be doing that.
We should all be doing that. Right. And it's like, so why spend $500 or $600 on a genetic test when it's all going to say, you need to look at your environment. You need to look at your diet. You know, it's all going to come out the same anyway. So you might as well just do it.
just assume you have it, move forward. No.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So let's get into the circadian rhythm, because we really haven't talked about that like we've touched on it slightly, but just explain what that is first off, so that for people who it's kind of new to, and how that is impacting us on the day to day.
Okay. So I'm just going to go into basics for this, because a lot of people don't understand how much it runs all of our hormonal behavior, including cortisol, including thyroid, and even our neurotransmitters. So when you think about the circadian rhythm in total, think about this light dark cycle that we have. So cortisol is supposed to be on a rhythm. And then when cortisol goes down, essentially melatonin should take over. And melatonin, a lot of people think, oh, it just helps you fall asleep. Well, melatonin it's what kind of does the cleanup work in our mitochondria, right? So any kind of symptom or dysfunction, just know that it's because your mitochondria has energy issues. That is what's happening. It's mitochondrial dysfunction. So when our cells can't get into these deep reparative states at night because cortisol's out of balance, insulin's out of balance, right? There's all of these other hormonal things that need to bind and be received at night when melatonin's strong, like leptin and other growth hormone, things like that. Those are all influenced by what cortisol and melatonin are doing throughout the day. So when we are trying to heal, it's very important that we are also connecting to our body's natural rhythm in that way. We are doing things that align with cortisol, waking us up, right? And then it peaks mid-morning and then slowly is on the downfall. So when we can arrange our lifestyle and our habits and all of these things to be more in tune with that, we're going to get there so much quicker, because everything else is just working in opposition of this natural cycle. And that is going to impact what's happening with your sex hormones, your thyroid, like I said, growth hormone, all of these other things. So it's going to impact things like blood sugar, this deep cellular healing that needs to happen. If you're not getting, a lot of people are like, well, I'm getting enough sleep. but they wake up and they're exhausted. Well, that tells me you're not getting into deep stages of sleep where you're doing deep cellular repair. So
Yes.
there's such a misnomer when it's like, no, I get plenty of sleep. It's like, well, if you wake up exhausted, you clearly didn't, you know what I mean? So it's
You
kind
didn't
of
get
just
the right kind of sleep.
right. You didn't get the right kind. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, okay, how can I honor my circadian rhythm with meal timing, my activity, my work productivity, things like that, so that I am not working in opposition of my body's natural, cycle to balance my hormones, when really your lifestyle is just working in opposition of them. You can't balance them in that way.
Okay, so the circadian rhythm isn't really, so it's not, when you're referring to the circadian rhythm, you're not necessarily referring to like the sun's light cycle. You're referring to your body's response, right?
Well, the sun is what dictates that circadian rhythm,
Okay.
right? So think about it in this regard, that the problem is so we have a timekeeper in our retina. It's called the
Okay.
suprachiasmatic nucleus. That receives light. So if we are always wearing glasses or sunglasses or contacts or all these things, we are not getting the right signals. So all of our hormones, including cortisol, including melatonin, are dictated by light signals that's received by that nucleus, right? That talks to the hypothalamus and either says, hey, let's generate more cortisol, or hey, let's start turning some of this pregnenolone into sex hormones, or let's start synthesizing neurotransmitters at certain points in the day. Every light spectrum throughout the day is telling your body to synthesize something different. And guess what? We're receiving artificial light signals from blue light, which is keeping cortisol through the roof 24/7. And we're wearing sunglasses all day to block the light signals that we need to be getting. So we have the retinal receptor, but we also have receptors on our skin. And the most common example I can talk about, like with a mismatch, is when we wear sunglasses and then we get sunburn, because we're giving mixed signals, right? That eye signal is getting a different signal than our skin. So we are not producing melanin to darken our skin when we're out in the sun. So that's the best example I can say of, like, we can't keep giving our body mixed signals and expect it to find balance.
That's so interesting. I love
this. I know. It's like mind blown.
I love your take on this. Because in the way that you explain it, because I never really understood like the communication, like the sunglass thing totally makes sense. That's like your eyes need to, like, the communication in your eyes need to know what is actually happening around you so that it can communicate to your body, to turn signals on and off to make sure that you have what you need. And I like, we've taken this, we've talked a lot about this. Like, I've talked to some neurologists and stuff about how our bodies are basically like electromagnetic beings. And like, we use signals like to communicate, and like we use light to communicate. And so I'm loving this, like, just kind of different way of looking at our body being like using light to communicate, right? Like, it's cool. Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, INTUNE, TUNE 30 for 30% off your entire order.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about, like, ideally, like, what is the right rhythm, and like what are those signals that we're needing throughout the day?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I always start people to bare minimum, if this is the only sun exposure you're getting during the day, is to view the sunrise, because most of our hormonal issues are caused by cortisol creeping up and up and up and up throughout the day. And like I said, when it's your body will always prioritize survival over optimization, right? Or reproduction or all of these other things. So when you view the sunrise, and that's the first light exposure you have of the day, that tells your body, okay, I know where you are. I know it's safe. The sun's coming up and I can stop making cortisol now. You're actually awake, right? Now, the problem is most of us, we grab a device first thing in the morning. That light from that device is going to be about 10 times brighter than the sunrise would be. So that's telling us to go straight from that ease into, quelling the cortisol response into, bam, it's solar noon in Costa Rica. You need to make that much cortisol, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's
Okay. What was that
like,
measurement that you talked about? I listened to the podcast that you did on your podcast. What is it called?
Yes.
Like
vibing well.
Vibing well. Yeah.
Stacy.
And you talked about like the measurement.
The kelvins. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
the kelvin.
So Kelvin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So Kelvin is a unit of measurement, essentially just heat and light. Okay. That's how we measure like the brightness of temperature, light temperatures. So sunrise, 1500 kelvins on average. A screen is going to be anywhere from 7,000 to 11,000 kelvins. Wow. So if you're waking up to that, your body, it's telling the blue light, we're isolating blue light. Now there is blue light in the sun spectrum, right? And rightly so, when cortisol should be at certain levels throughout the day, blue light's going to activate it. It's going to tell the hypothalamus to make cortisol. But when we isolate blue light, which is like all of our screens, all of our devices, is this isolated spectrum of blue light, we're only getting cortisol, right? We're not doing any of the other hormones. We're not doing any of the other neurotransmitters. It's literally just cortisol, cortisol, cortisol. And that's why we can't find balance. That's why we're not, and that's going to start impacting that melatonin synthesis that needs to start from sunrise on. Okay. So we got to be synthesizing it all day. And then activating it at night. So I usually have people start with the sunrise, be outside sometime the hour. A lot of people are like, oh, you're so lucky. You just go to the beach and blah, blah, blah. But you don't have to be on the horizon to view it, right? Just be outside sometime within the hour. I haven't always been on the beach, but I've always prioritized sunrise. Do that, right? Do that. And I would say phase 2 is cut the sunglasses. Unless you're on reflective water during the day, where obviously you could have some retinal damage, you got to break the habit. And I know we're light sensitive if we're so used to it. It was a sad goodbye for me because I was a collector of some nice sunglasses. But when I realized how much damage they were doing, I'm just like, okay. Yes. Boat days only.
Yes. It's so funny because I never did sunglasses. I mean, I wear glasses, so I had to like take them off to get that light. Sure. But I never wore sunglasses, and people were always like, why don't you wear sunglasses? It's so bad.
Good.
I'm like, I don't know.
You don't have to break the habit. That's awesome.
Okay. So let me make sure that I'm understanding this right and like communicate it back to you so you can tell me. So the spectrums of light are what is going to tell our body the certain hormones to produce. Like, so like, for example, blue light's gonna, tell you to produce cortisol. And then I just forgot the name of it, but the measurement that you had talked about.
The kelvins.
Kelvins. Yeah. I'm like, it sounds like someone,
like a name.
Yes. Yeah. Then the kelvins are going to tell the body how much.
Well, so it's the spectrum of light, but it's also the brightness of it, right? The brightness is going to elicit even more cortisol. So some people are like, I'm turning my screen red and this and that, but it's still the brightness can be working in opposition or creating more cortisol too. So just kind of recognizing and just kind of making sure the first thing you see is natural light to start your day. Otherwise you're starting on this hormonal chaos to start. And we wonder why we can't find balance, right?
I'm getting kicked in the butt right now. I'm getting the good kick I need. Okay. So then what produces melatonin? Is it red light?
So the full spectrum essentially. So the red light, sunrise is going to start that red light production. Absolutely. So red light, I prefer it from the sun. I know red light therapy is an option. I have a device too for cloudy days and things like that. But even on a cloudy day, you're still going to get UV. You're still going to get red light from the sun. It's still, is bouncing off everywhere.
Right.
But yeah, that red light that starts sunrise and then ends at sunset, that's always going to be available during the day. That's what helps us, produce melatonin. And then when we view the sunset, that's going to help us kind of synthesize it and get into that. And body temperature has to drop, all these things, which is another reason why I am such a huge proponent and move your dinner up. I can't express that enough.
Okay.
Because every time, not only is it competing with all the hormonal, things that need to happen at night, but it's also raising your body temperature when you eat, and your body temp has to lower to get into these deep states of sleep, right? Just think about it as like a mini hibernation that needs to happen every night. And so doing something like a warm therapy, sauna therapy, things like that are better at night because it's going to help drop your core temp. So when you're raising it by eating too late, you're also competing with melatonin and those deeper stages of sleep.
Okay. And how do you, I know you've talked about this before, but what's the best way to identify the right time for you to eat?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so individual. So I usually start people by saying like 4 hours before bed, don't eat 4 hours before bed. Right. But then like some people push that a little too much. And so it's like, definitely don't eat after sunset, because that's when melatonin really needs to be, moving in and moving onto the scene. You don't want to compete with that. But what I find to be the easiest visual is for when people track their blood sugar. And I'm like, do what you can to finally get this stable blood sugar response overnight. Because if we're doing this, you're not getting into those deep states of sleep. You're not receiving.
If you're eating right before bed, then your blood sugars are all over the place.
Yep. They're all over the place. And it's the best visual way to really know, like for me personally, I usually don't eat after about 3 o'clock. 3 to 4 o'clock gives me a super stable response. And I eat plenty to get to that point. I'm not worried about, not having dinner, whatever.
Yeah.
So it does look different for everybody. And also thinking about everybody's on a different latitude. The sun's setting at different times, right? So it's truly about tuning into your individual response. And we're all in a different state of our glucose, insulin capability. So really kind of honing in on that is I find that seeing is believing. And so if people have the visuals and they know like, okay, I'm doing this and it's getting more steady, like they'll do more of it. Right. So it's all just kind of like use those tools, not to make you crazy, but to help guide you on the right path.
Okay. I'm curious about supplementation here. Like, do you recommend people, like if they are struggling with cortisol or they're struggling with melatonin, like, do you recommend supplementation, or could that get in the way? Like, what does that look like when you're talking to somebody? You're like, get the basics down first.
You already know.
Yeah.
You already know.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not a fan of supplementing melatonin because there's a couple of reasons. Anytime you supplement something that the body should be making it on its own, you're messing with the negative and positive feedback loops. So you are essentially, the body has it coming in. It's like, cool, I don't have to make that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Like shutting it down.
With that. Yeah.
I'm not playing
that too. And no, and here's the thing too. One thing that I've noticed clinically, and even in my own children, when melatonin's taken, a lot of people will say, I wake up at like 3 or 4 o'clock and I can't go back to sleep. So like you might be getting to sleep quicker, but your sleep cycle is way shortened when you are kind of like used to taking melatonin, which is something that's pretty interesting. And I also have seen studies where it can cause macular degeneration when you take it long-term. So not a fan, especially when you can literally for free go outside and have it made.
Right. It's almost so simple. I mean, my mom is huge on getting the morning light, getting grounded. Like she's always preaching this. And it just seems way too simple.
It seems too simple. It does. And honestly, if you would have told me this 10 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, right. Sure.
Yes. And I love that we're getting back to this place because I feel like we went through this, I feel like everybody goes to the stage of just buying all the supplements. I mean, like you have hundreds and hundreds of dollars of supplements. You're trying to figure out what to take, why to take it, all the things. And I love that we are talking about this now about like, before you do anything, get to the low hanging fruit. Like go outside in the morning, put your feet on the earth. Like the earth is like literally like a battery pack to our body.
Yes. Yes. I think people they just don't understand it enough. And I think that's what I try so hard to educate us and make these like silly analogies as to like, how we are receiving that. So they understand. When people don't understand why and how it's helping them, they're not going to do it. Right. So it's truly like, the more you can explain it to them and coach them through it and tell them why they're doing that, like clearly your mitochondria is having trouble making energy from food, right? You're having weight loss resistance, you're having using food only for energy is actually super like not sustainable, because every time we're making electrons through through the mitochondria by way of food, we're producing free radicals. So for somebody who's already inflamed and having a lot of trouble with their mitochondria, one of the best things you can be doing is getting energy from other sources, right? So the sun, the ground, right? Working on your structured water internally and starting to mitigate all of the things that are draining that mitochondrial energy. That's what it's about. It's not about like what cocktail of supplements are you deficient in, right?
Yeah.
Like it's honestly, I know it seems too simple, but remember, you can't bottle these things up and sell them. That's why we're being pushed the supplement route, right? It's simple, but it works.
Right. And it should, and even if it ends up being that you need more support, it's like, how long do you think that someone should be doing kind of like the waking up in the morning? We should maybe like break that down, like what that really looks like, but waking up in the morning, seeing the first morning light, seeing the sunset, not, eating at the right time of day, and all of these things that are going to kind of help start producing the right amount of cortisol levels, the right amount of melatonin, and getting you into that restful sleep. How long do you really need to be doing that for before you really look at other things?
Well, here's the thing. I run testing on my clients that I take in because to be quite honest, do I need the testing? I don't, but people need to see it. They have to see it so they know that it's that mind body connection, right? They have to know what's causing that impairment. And so I do run testing. It's very selective based on the individual, like a Dutch test, right? Let's just see when they see their cortisol's like super out of whack and their sex hormones are super tanked. That's a visual that they can take in, right? They get it. They're like, I got to stop skipping meals and drinking coffee all day. Like, so things like that. Now, some people start to do the right things, like seeing some of the sunlight, but then they are failing to block the rest, right? So it's a little bit of both. We got to be getting the appropriate signaling, but also blocking the ones that are causing that high cortisol state all the time. So it's a dual effort, and it's got to happen, because you can't just do one and be like, oh, it's not working. Right.
There's so many different moving pieces. It's all simple, but you still have to do the work.
And you got to be consistent with it.
So let's talk about blue light blockers and yellow, like the tinted yellow. Like, what are the differences, and when should you be wearing them, and all of that?
Yeah, of course. So I tell people, of course, that the yellow ones are going to be for during the day. So if you're like right now, my screen is red, like it's red and black. That's all it is. So that's why you don't see me wearing them often. Now, if I have to turn that red off because I have to look at something and really see the color, I'll put my yellow ones on. So if you're under LED lighting, fluorescent lighting, you're behind screens all day, do the yellow glasses, because the yellow, they don't block out all blue light, because we still, during the day, we have to have some level of cortisol, right? So they just help you maintain that balance if you're around screens and crappy lighting all day, but still take breaks and get outside so your body knows what time of day it is and what hormone it should be synthesizing. And then the amber ones, I usually say start those right around sunset. So you see the sunset, hopefully you put your feet on the ground, the body knows what time it is, going to start synthesizing melatonin, and then you're blocking all blue light. And it's easier to do that by way of glasses than it is making every screen in your house red, which is pretty much impossible, right? Because even your refrigerator is going to be a blast of LED lighting, know?
Yeah. I see the movement of everyone putting the red stickers over everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is a lot.
Yeah. It's too much. Just, just do what you can to protect your retina. Talking to the hypothalamus and saying, hey, let's produce more cortisol, because that's going to impact your melatonin at night. So it's just way easier to control. And even my kids, like they wear their blue light blockers. They know, like, TV's not going on until those glasses are on. We're just a big dorky family with all of our blue light blockers.
No, but I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I love that it's just like, because I don't think that, I feel like this is just coming into play I'm sure we've talked about this for centuries and all the things, but like, I feel like it's just really hitting the light, because we're just now really realizing the impact of this kind of technological advancement that we experienced, like we are really just having our first generation kind of coming up in
Yes.
this and seeing
Yep.
so much anxiety and depression and, like
Yep.
autoimmune disorders and all of these things that we're like, what the heck is going on? And the fact that the solution is so simple makes me so happy, because even though, yes, it is going to require a lifestyle change. Maybe you're going to have to get up earlier than you used to. Maybe you're going to have to eat earlier than you used to. But
Mm-hmm.
you're going to put some glasses on before you watch your TV or get on the computer or whatever it is. But it's not going to cost you very much. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
it's not like, but if you wait until something's really wrong, it's going to cost you a lot. you know?
Right, right. That's the thing. It's like, I know these, and like I said, it's just the level of understanding that a lot of people need, because once they understand, but it, unfortunately, it's just in this overabundance of information, right? For them, they're thinking, oh, I just need this adaptogen, or I just need to fix my cortisol by taking, licorice root or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, unfortunately, it is becoming that way where people feel like it's so out of their hands, or I don't need a medication, I need a supplement. And it really is, just keep it simple. I can't tell you how much the healing is found in the simplicity, right? Like, it's not as crazy as it seems. And I'm not sure how old you are, but like when we were young, when I was young, LEDs, halogens, those things weren't a thing. We only
Yeah.
had incandescent. Even our TVs were incandescently lit, right?
Yeah.
So we have to understand not just our food supply, but our environment, right? The amount of EMF, the amount of blue light exposure, all of those things are impacting hormones, neurotransmitters, our mitochondria, right? They're really affecting our body's ability to make and utilize and assimilate energy properly. And that's why I keep saying man-made disease, because this could be mitigated. And my goal is always to help people. Look, I live in the modern world too. I don't live in a cave, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I definitely make sure, okay, I had a tech day. Guess what? I'm going to ground like hell tonight, right? Like, I'm going to take my minerals. I'm going to kind of try to undo some of that cellular dehydration that happened. I'm going to move my body more. I'm going to view the horizon. I'm going to do everything I can to mitigate the tech time that I was on, right? So it's just learning how to do that. And we could work so much more synergistically with our environment if we did that.
Yes, I love that. And I feel like so the piece that I got with the sleeping was the EMF impact. Like, so you're coming in with a kind of different approach, and I think both things are important, because kind of where I was learning through the EMF route and like getting to the place where I was like, okay, unplug everything and, like get some EMF modulation around and, ground before bed and all those things, is like that our body is electrical beings. We need to get into that restoration space. I think one of the big things that we hear whenever we're talking about EMF is like, oh, well, EMF is everywhere. And if it was harm, you know what I mean? Like, we're surrounded by EMF. It's not new. It's like, okay, yes, the earth has an electromagnetic field, and it's,
Sure.
it resonates at 7 point something hertz. And it's, a very, very low resonance. And that's kind of where our body's supposed to kind of sit into when we're getting into like rest and, restoration.
Yes.
And we don't ever really get to get there because we have all of these outside communications happening. Like, if we have our Wi-Fi plugged in the room next door, and we have our cell phone right by our head and it's plugged in, and it's still getting, it's still getting signals, like it's still getting people sending you messages, and your Instagram is, updating, and all of these things are happening.
Yes.
And then you have just like your smart devices plugged in.
Yes.
All of these things are sending signals to the body that the body really doesn't recognize, and is trying to, it's like a language it's trying to learn. Because yes, we use frequencies in our body to communicate, to turn, to send signals, to turn things on and off, to turn genes on and off. But those signals, the body resonates at such a low frequency that these man-made frequencies are millions of times faster and different than what our body is really used to. So there's like, that's the other part of the not being able to get into that rest.
Right. 1,000,000%. And I think of it as in a language of, when you start talking about frequency, you lose some people, right?
Yes.
Like, because they think, I always try to speak the science without being like quoting study after study, to say like, It truly is about thinking about your brainwave states and your brainwave patterns and where they should be. So when you said that 7.36 hertz of the Schumann resonance, right?
Right.
That's the frequency of the earth. That is also the brainwave frequency where we are in our theta state, where we are resting and repairing, right? The state that we all desire to get into when we're meditating and those sort of things. That is a very coherent brainwave state. That tells the cells like survival, like shut down survival, get into creation mode, right? Like let's
heal
and rest and digest. Yeah. Homeostasis. And so if you think of it in the way, if frequency is too woo for you, even though it's whatever, think of it as those devices are keeping you in a very incoherent brainwave pattern called the beta brainwave, high beta brainwave state. And if you look at the differences in those two patterns alone, you can see like, it looks like erratic blood sugar, right? It's just this up and down, and if we were hyper focused on something and in that state, it may not be the worst thing for us, but in those places at night where we need to be healing and restoring and repairing, to stay in that brainwave incoherent pattern causes a lot of mixed messages on a cellular level. And it's really hard to pull out of, and it's really hard to heal if we are constantly feeding the body incoherent frequency messages.
Oh, you explained that so much better. Thank you very much.
Oh no, everybody
so
needs to hear it in a different way.
Yes,
right?
but I love the way that you laid that out. Thank you so much. Okay, so can you speak into that with grounding a little bit? Like, can you give a little bit of insight of what is actually happening when you are getting your feet on the earth?
Yeah. I think the most explainable way to think of this is that when we just think about when we just living life or being around things that are like our technology, EMF, things like that, they're dehydrating the body, but they're also building up an acidic charge in the body, right? We need a negative net charge. A negative charge means that we have energy potential in the cell.
Yeah, so sounds bad, but it's not.
No, it's not good. Yeah, negative is good. Yeah, we need it. So people are like, "Oh, positive charge, yeah, positive vibes." No, it's not like that. We don't want too much of a positive charge because that means acidity, and acidity means disease and inflammation, and means no energy potential. Right? It means we are losing energy at that point. So when you put your feet on the earth, you literally are discharging that because the earth is full of negative ions. And so those negative ions get transferred into our body. We are literally discharging that acidity that's built up into our body and alkalizing our body the second we put our feet on the ground. So when we talked earlier about food not necessarily being the most sustainable way to receive all of our energy, remember that nature has built-in forms of that. And one of them is through earthing and grounding. Those free electrons, right? Those are electrons that don't have to go through these processes to be turned into energy like food does. It literally is there. It's an energy potential that's ready to go wherever our body needs it, assuming that we are hydrated enough. Right. And I think I've shared some in my stories of like, look at the difference between my grounding reading now and then when I take minerals. We have to make sure that we are hydrated, which is another reason why EMF is such a deterrent to our healing or even our grounding potential, because it is cellularly dehydrating, right?
So interesting.
So it's like I said, it's like one of these things, like if you're going to go do it all because it's going to work for you when you are understanding, I need minerals, I need grounding, I need sunshine, right? All of these things are going to help my mitochondria and help me produce energy in lots of different ways other than just relying on food.
So do you have a minerals that you like?
Yes. Quinton Minerals is my go-to. It's essentially purified seawater. It is so good.
Okay. Yes. My mom recommends the same one. Yeah. That's so good. She's like totally, right. Yes. Mom is on your wavelength right now. It's like, just call mom. She knows what she's talking about.
You're like, damn it. I'm going to try it.
No, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. And it's the perfect in my personal life. And I know so many moms out there who have just like, we go through this period of time where we just kind of like, brush it all aside as if it's just normal to feel that way as a mother. Like it's just normal to have no energy. It's normal to feel tired all the time. It's normal to have, constant anxiety. It's normal to, all of these things that we're, that's just part of, being a mom. It's like, sure, we have, some things that we contend with being a mom and being responsible for these tiny humans, but I don't think it's natural for us to never feel ourselves. And so these little things that we can do, like getting up before your children get up and going outside, or getting up with your children and bringing them outside. And that's what I love about these practices, is that these are things that these like magic gifts, these beautiful gifts that you can give your children, and you can give them now. And that way, when they and they start kind of growing up with these very simple but consistent, relationships with nature, honestly. And then their whole relationship with health is going to be so different if you just start, just like start making it normal. It's normal to go outside and put your feet on the earth. And it's, it's like, we're all going to go watch the sunset now. That's just part of our daily routine. And that's just, I love that this is happening and that children are getting this. And I'm so excited to see kind of like how, like, I'm excited to see my children, as adults now, and like where they're going to be, having had this very fundamental, very important thing that we lost. Like, we lost this in society. We wake up, we put on rubber shoes, we immediately look at our phone. We don't eat breakfast. I'm really guilty of that. Like, not eating anything in the morning, getting a cup of coffee, like going to work. Like my office here, I was listening to your podcast. It's like, crack a window or whatever. I'm like, I gotta get a new office because we can't crack windows. Like it's just fluorescent lights everywhere, no windows that can be open, and you have your whole day there. Then you go home and your rubbish. It's just like, oh my God. Like, when I started really learning this and then paying attention to even someone who's been kind of conscious of that, like really since I was kind of in my 20s, but still how far removed I was from it. And then like how far removed most people are from that. It's kind of wild. Like, we drive our cars, windows are up, air conditioning's on. We don't crack the windows to like let that natural light in, or to let the, the good bacteria in, like all of those things that play such a huge role.
Yes, we're so closed off, and we're losing our resilience as a human race because of it. And it's just important to know we can get that back, and I think there is such a level of awareness of people that are being proactive in that way. And we may be the ones who are like, out of left field right now, but eventually, there'll be a greater awakening for it. I just would rather be on this side at this point.
Yes. It's a good time. It's a good time to be on that side. Okay. So a little bit more about like the role of EMF. I want to talk a little bit about like, okay, so we know grounding is really important to kind of like discharge the positive, right? Like the acidic, and also making sure that you have some kind of natural minerals to kind of hydrate. Is it hydrating your cells? What is the minerals, or just kind of
they're improving just think about conductivity, right? Okay. So like, we're generating these free electrons from the earth, but where are they going to go if they can't flow? So think about the minerals helping with the flow aspect of that, right? Okay. It's helping with that flow.
Okay. So grounding, I think, people say like, well, how often should you ground? As often as you can. Because and it really is like one of those things where it's kind of instantaneous, right? Like, once your feet are on the earth, it's like, it's very quick. Even if you have a 5-minute break in work and you just go outside and you have like a little patch of grass that's there that you can go put your feet on.
Well, the magnetism is highest sunrise and sunset. So those are the times where I'm therapeutically telling people, view the sunrise, but also double whammy it, put your feet on the ground at those times, because you're going to get more out of it. But any time is good. So don't just say, oh, I missed sunrise, so I can't ground.
Right. Okay. And then when it's like, let's get it. So with grounding and then like blocking versus modulation, like, can we talk a little bit about that and like where you kind of see those types of things playing in? Because I think because Aries Tech, sponsors this podcast, people assume that that's like the only thing that we recommend or like whatever. And it's like, no, there's so many different parts to this. And so many, like, there are times where Faraday comes into play and that's important. And there are times where like maybe a grounding mat or something like that. So where do you lie with all of that? And what do you kind of recommend as far as when?
No, that's a good question. So I always recommend that you test your individual environment. Tri-field is a great EMF meter that you can kind of go through your home and see where the biggest problem areas are, right? What can we mitigate? What can we turn off at night? Like Wi-Fi, right? Like, if the problem is so many people get sucked into the smart homes that they're, you know what I mean?
It's so scary.
I don't want anything that needs to be running at night with Wi-Fi, right? Like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't care if my doorbell's on or off, like whatever. get your Wi-Fi off at night, right? That's keeping we were talking about your brain in that beta brainwave pattern. That's one that you can easily mitigate. Um, Anything that's going to be on your body, wired headphones, right? You don't need to microwave your brain with
Right.
the AirPods. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think that's another thing, like seeing is believing. When you go through your devices and you see how, holy crap, my watch is just as high as the microwave is. It's a little see it to believe it moment, right? You can't put your
Like
shutters
the
on
Apple
anymore.
Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
I've
huge.
held on to my AirPods for a long time. I will be honest. I did, because I just was like, well, I do everything else right. Let me just tell you, like, if I ever have symptoms, it's in my sinuses. Like, they will not,
Same.
it's just like, I just can't drain. When I finally stopped using my AirPods, it was like a day or two later, all of a sudden, like years of just like, I can't drain went away. Like, no crap.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. Everything I've done, through the years, it was just that hit of radiation that was stopping it from
And
happening.
if you are a mom, please
Inflammation. Yeah.
get your kids some wired headphones. Don't let them fall asleep with the AirPods in the air, talking to their friends. Like, it's very common. It's very common for the
so
kids.
common.
And it's kind of like a social thing. Yeah. Like they have them in just like all day, every day. Like my nieces and nephews, I'm like, get that out of your
Well, and here's the thing: their skull obviously it's not as formed, right? It's not as hard and calcified as an adult's would be. So they are way more, vulnerable. At risk for way more vulnerable. So anything that's on your body, try to block, right? Because like we can't block. If we blocked everything, we would go insane, because it may be blocking our own native EMF from our heart, our brain waves, the Schumann resonance from the earth. Like, we have to have that, right? We have to have that compensatory relationship. But blocking anything that's on your body, and making sure anything that's on your body is in airplane mode or wired is one of the top things that I can. And even in your bedroom, things like that, making sure you don't have things plugged in around like your head. Now, distance, I will say, also helps, right? Like, so if you're going around your house and you're like, okay, this fan is pretty high, but when I move a few feet away from it, it's all good, so just take that into consideration too. You don't need to be fearful, but just be aware, right?
Yeah, sometimes just not having your bed right up against the wall, just moving it out, 6 inches or whatever, can make a huge difference.
Yes. And then, for the environments like in my office, right? That's when I'm going to have something that's going to harmonize, because I have to have Wi-Fi, because a lot of places you ask them to hardwire they're like, they go cross-eyed. Like, it's just not even an option anymore.
Yes.
In a lot of places. So yes, I have to have Wi-Fi on at certain points in the day, but I will have a harmonizer on me. I will make sure I have a hell of a lot of minerals, on me. And then I am taking breaks to put my feet on the earth and get light, to mitigate, the effects of the cellular dehydration that's being caused by the EMF exposure. So yeah, it is. I think harmonizers are great. And especially, like, let's say you live in an apartment and you have neighbors that you can't control, right? You can't control if they're turning off their Wi-Fi or anything like that. Or you're in your car, right? Even cars are so smart. It's scary now, right?
Yeah.
They have their Wi-Fi going on. So having something in a situation like that, just to know that you're harmonizing with the EMF, but not necessarily trying to block everything, I think is more doable, less fear, but still being proactive.
Yeah, just doing whatever you can. Yeah, I really was with the Faraday stuff, because I kind of went through that phase where I was really into all of like the clothing and like all of that stuff, which like sometimes I still have this kind of it's like a Faraday blanket that I put on the kids sometimes when they're watching. But I was thinking that through of like, oh yeah, like if we were to just put Faraday on our, like those beanies that they sell and clothes and stuff, it's like, then what happens to your body's natural communication? Like we're interfering there now rather than giving. Yes. Yep. So that's really why I came, because like I started as an affiliate with Aries 5 years ago. And that's as I started learning more and more, and like, talking to all the different, like the neurologists and getting an explanation of how it's working and all that. I'm like, this makes the most sense to me right now, just because there's so much that we just can't control. There's, like you were saying, there's so much out of our control that just giving our body, it's similar to just taking minerals. Like taking minerals and using Aries is like you're giving your body that natural boost that it needs to contend with these things that are out of our control until we can get it under our control.
Exactly. Until we can get to an environment where we're going to help mitigate some of that, right? Because my problem with tools is that you need the tools, right? But don't skimp on the actual lifestyle and habit changes because you have the tool, right? Don't be like, well, I don't need to ground. I got my harmonite. Like, no, don't get your feet on the earth. It's not enough.
Yes.
But can it help? Yes, 1,000,000% it can. I mean, I can tell you, I swear up and down, like, using what is it? The big one, the Zone Max.
Yeah.
In my upstairs, my sleep has changed. And my sleep wasn't bad, but it has changed since putting it up there. I can tell my kids' sleep has changed. So there is something to it,
Yeah.
And so just kind of understand, and we turn our Wi-Fi off and all those things, but just knowing that there still are exposures that we
can't control.
So it makes a difference. Yeah.
Okay. We were talking a little bit before we recorded about where you're finding like products that you see have a lot of EMF. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So not to elicit any fear, of course, it's always just knowing. Yeah. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent in like test, right? Because it's like, you can't take somebody's word for it, right? Because everybody, even our home environments are also different because like I said, our neighbors, we might be right by a 5G tower, like who knows, we're all different. So test and see what's happening. But one thing that I really I started out like testing the grounding shoes and stuff like that, like seeing if they're legit or not. And some of them actually really are, and I'm happy about it. But I think one thing people need to notice is like, think about the depth. Like if you're thinking, oh, every time I step on concrete, I'm grounding. Well, the depth of the concrete matters and things like that. So just kind of like, don't think that you're, just be aware. Test it. It's a $10 multimeter. Anybody can do that, but the EMF things, I don't know, somewhere in my head, I have a PEMF mat and I was like, I'm just curious, like, it's clearly plugged into a wall. Is this doing more harm than good? Right. And because these companies say, oh, we're low to no EMF. And so I went through and I tested all of my healing tools and I was like, holy crap, there's no way this is going to be beneficial. Like there's no way, which I know is like, I know it's one of those things that's probably going to upset some people, but test for yourself, right? Could be my electricity in my home, but I tested it in lots of different outlets and it's generating a ton of EMF. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense to think, oh, I'm grounding, I'm using this PEMF mat when the ground is clearly right outside. Like we just use that. You don't have to worry about this dirty electricity problem, right?
Right. It's so wild.
That was really mind blowing.
I mean, this whole movement of like the getting the expensive red lights, getting the expensive PEMF mats, getting the cold plunges, getting all of these things where it's just like, or go put your feet on the earth, jump in the ocean, watch your sunrise and sunset, go find a natural spring you can jump into. Like
literally. Yeah.
It is wild. Again, going back to my mom, I'm like, really, I'm just going to call my mom after this. Like, Mom, you're really on point right now.
So sorry.
Yes. Yeah. No. I mean, she was a nurse for over 20 years. Yeah. And so she just kind of found her way here through going healing process of MS and stuff. And, but yeah, her thing is like, yes, we could, if you want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, like we can get you all the equipment to have it right in your house. But also if you don't want to spend thousands of dollars and you really just need something to do now, like, the best
right outside.
Yes. Like it was given to us from the point of that we began, and we have removed ourselves from it. And now all we have to do is like invite it in. Like her big thing is like, just crack your window and invite it in. Like invite in the good bacteria, invite in the lights, and like, let nature know that like, this is woo woo and whatever, but
oh, I mean,
yeah. But it's like, let nature know that like, oh, you get it. And like, you're here for that healing or that support.
I do something. So like with my clients, the ones who are ready to hear it, I will tell them like, I'm like, physically create space for a change, right? Like clean out something, clean out a cabinet, a closet, something that like emotional or like the physical clutter is emotional, mental clutter, right? And how can you say, I want to create something new, whether it's a new outcome or anything else, but your whole environment's cluttered? That's a very mixed signal, right?
Yeah.
So,
That That's
It
good.
makes
Like
sense.
just the mindfulness of it. It really does make a
Yeah.
huge impact. I mean, even if
Mm-hmm.
you don't believe the way that it sounds, there's so much research kind of coming out about the power of the mind too, and
Yeah.
having such an impact on just knowing that you're ready for something like that. Like just
Mm-hmm.
getting into that space where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I know I'm ready for that. I know I'm
Yeah.
ready for that change will have such a
Yep.
massive impact. Okay, where
Yes.
can people find you and connect with you
Yeah.
and learn from you and all the
So
things?
yeah, of course. So we mentioned my podcast, Vibing Well with Dr. Stacy. It's just a solo podcast I do. And then Instagram is where I spend most of my energy just because I can't tackle more than that. More social media. I'm like, my dad's like, you use social media to tell people to get off of social media. And I'm like, kind
I
of.
know. Only
I
takes
was like,
5
this
minutes
is
to
the world we're
post.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
hilarious.
So yeah, at dr.stacy.nd on Instagram. And I'm starting to I do one-on-one, but I also do some group programs like live. I love doing my group programs live. And so those are different ways, you can reach me.
Amazing. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. This was such an
of
impactful
course.
episode. And hopefully we can have you on again soon because I feel like there's so many other things that we can dive
Yeah,
into
I would
together.
love to. Yeah.
All
Thank you.
right. Tune back in. If you guys want the show notes to this episode, go to wave.ariestech.com and all the details and all of her contact information will be there. So, all right.
Thank you.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the show notes at wave.ariestech.com.